And I'm Matt Wally.
From the One Time Podcast.
Well, I hope you love listening to what we've been working on. We're absolutely loving doing it.
And as our guests get bigger and bigger and our conversations get better and better, all we ask from you is one thing. Subscribe.
That's it. Everything improves with that one little button. So please help us out. If you love the content, give us a subscribe. Hello, and welcome to another episode of That One Time Podcast. Today, we've got a very special guest. I mean, they're all super special, but we've got Cameron Rosin. He's a guy who went from nature photography to podcaster and philosophy educator and has managed to combine his passion for landscape photography and learnings of stoic teachings to amass a following of over 180,000 people on his Instagram and I think another 100,000 on his TikTok in the last 12 months, which is completely wild. How did he do it? We'll listen and find out.
Let's do it.
Oh, my man. All right. Welcome.
Was it necessary to do it 3 times?
I mean...
I would have appreciated 5 welcome.
Welcome.
All right, now we got it.
How are you, Cam?
I'm good. How are you guys doing?
Yeah, very good.
Very good.
Life's wild. It's been pretty wonderful. So
Yeah. It's wonderful and chaotic, and the wonder is equally correlated with potential stress and sonic
You
stress.
nailed it. You pretty much nailed it on
he
the head.
gets it. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, I totally resonate with that.
Tell us more about that. What's going on?
Just the undercurrents of the human experience, dude. Like, I think like mankind came into the world suffering, and we're just like trying to navigate our way towards fulfillment. And now we have like algorithms and things to deal with like that. Like it's the dance.
It's a lot.
It is a dance.
Realizing how much is possible, and how much of a role we have to play in creating that possibility. But then that doesn't come without costs. Like
No.
to take steps towards the unknown and do something that's not being done can make it. I mean, there's no rule book to follow, and if there was, I wouldn't follow it.
Well, look, as far as I'm concerned, you're dancing pretty well, so it's
thank you. You
so
too,
fun.
man.
Oh.
I can see the sparkle in your eyes from here.
It's a lie. It's
a ring light.
It's just a ring light. My first question for you is going to be a really nice, easy one.
He's lying.
What is the context of your early years that allow us to understand you as a human?
Maybe I was raised in a small mountain town in rural Montana that had 12 bars and 9 churches, and we were one of the only non-religious families.
Wow.
What does that do to a person?
Good things, I think. Like, it meant that I was, and I certainly I had less to unlearn growing up. I had less parameters and rules in place around how we should be and what we should be doing. And so there's that, I didn't have to liberate myself from as many of the institutionalized ways of existing that other people might have. Because with any religious practice, especially one that's being kind of westernized, there's lots of rules and lots of cognitive dissonance that comes from those rules. Like feeling a certain way and then thinking differently about the way that you're feeling and creating that friction and suffering in between. Right? I think that it was something that, I'm really grateful. I remember going to after school church camp with some buddies because they finally convinced me to go, and I was like, we're playing on the playground, they're giving us juice boxes and cookies. We're like, this is sick. God is fucking awesome. And then they're like, all right, come inside now. We're going to do a reading. I sat down with my juice box and my cookies. I'm like, sweet. And then they just started talking about what was in the big book. I was looking around going, you guys are eating this up. What's going on? You don't question any of this? Get here and take this on?
I grew up in a very religious family as well. My dad's Muslim and my mum's born again Christian on a pretty intense level, so I understand exactly. And I was always like, what the fuck's going on here? So I get it.
And there's nothing wrong. Like there's nothing wrong with it, right? It's just the some of the isolation that could come with being not ascribing to a certain faith in a place full of faith.
Dude, I get it.
And developing your own as you go, right? And my faith is just like this cherry-picked basket of things that I enjoyed over the years that if I were to describe it, I couldn't.
Well, so try and describe it.
Okay, you got me. I mean, my faith would be, it's like a deep, unmovable faith in the universe that kind of, it's all working out, right? And it's something that is very helpful, because that's what a faith ideally should be, right? Something that helps us to navigate life and reduce suffering for ourselves and for the people around us. Like Buddha said, may I attain enlightenment for the benefit of all sentience. And so faith should be this tool to interface with reality in a way that is beneficial for reality. So as soon as it's not, as soon as a faith instigates some kind of divisiveness and law, then it's no longer something that's liberating. It's something that's kind of chaining you to something. And when we don't think critically about the reasons why we're doing things, we end up living a life that is entirely not on our terms.
Question for you. I grapple with this quite a lot. Sometimes the frameworks allow for happiness. Like there's that study that says that, I'm going to butcher it, but people were given 3 or 4 options for something at a restaurant and they had a much higher life satisfaction or satisfaction from what they had ordered versus having, say, 20 or 30 options. So this idea of sometimes maybe the religious framework allowing you to be happier because there's less choice seems somewhat valid in a lot of cases. Like, what are your thoughts around that?
Big time. I definitely can see that. I mean, I can get paralyzed walking into a grocery store seeing 48 types of lemonade. I'm like, can you just give me something with lemons? Something that's so difficult. Like the amount of decisions that we have to make when we're presented with just this paradox of choice. And then
It's getting worse now.
Well, it is. And it's also like we have this infinite number of choices in front of us, but not really infinite, because you can drive any car that you want as long as it's the cars that have been built and prescribed. You can have any phone that you want as long as it's the only phone that exists. Like there's the freedom comes with its own cost of like not ascribing to a certain faith. You're right. Those parameters help to reduce the burden on your computer of figuring things out. Like, okay, hang on. I don't have to figure this question out because they said this in the big book, and I can come back to that faith and understand that I don't need to know because it's already been taken care of. Like it reduces the responsibility of us figuring out what's going on. And I could certainly see that as reducing suffering, for sure. Like if I could fully sit back and immerse myself in the arms of of a loving deity that figured all this stuff out for me and has my back, it would reduce the need for me to have to create that thing myself, which is kind of what is occurring for many of us. Like, no longer are we just wrapped up in the local geographical faith of a certain region, because we're so global now that we're exposed to everything. And when we're exposed to everything, it kind of makes us, it's like it introduces this point of, or an aspect of absurdity and helplessness into it. It's like, all right, if there's all these different frameworks and practices and religions and faiths and spiritualities to choose from, then are they all saying kind of the same thing? And they are, in different words. And so it's like finding what vibes and go deep on that. And then if you get to a certain point and it's no longer vibing, pick something else.
Move on to the next one. Yeah. We were talking in our last episode about the mountain analogy, how I feel like all religions are at the different parts of the same mountain, and they're just like, we're going up this way, this is the only way to go, and then you get to the same point.
Oh, that's so true, except some points have 72 virgins and some don't.
Yeah, well, no, but the 72 virgin point, I think, is about here, and the goal is still here.
I don't know, man. I might get distracted at the virgins.
But that's part of the journey. Dope. All right. Well, that was a nice intro. So, we have to do this in person next time. This will be so much fun when you're back down this way. You've had a wild 12 months. What's been going on? And just tell us about there's, I know you personally, quite well now, and I've seen your story play out, and we've spoken a bit about it all. But for those who don't know, there was, say, a version of you pre 12 months ago, and then there was a clear set point in time where you said, "This is it," and then there was a version of you after that, and the version of you after that is fucking banging, like it's killing it.
I'm glad you think that, dude, because you should spend a day in my head.
No, I can only imagine. So let's talk about where you were, what triggered the change, what's happened in the last 12 months, and how you're feeling.
Thank you for that question, because I probably haven't. I process it in little bites and chunks, as opposed to actually fleshing it out. And there's any attempt to define it and figure it out is just like an attempt that'll only grasp a little bit of it, but we try anyway because that's fun and that's what conversations and podcasts are all about.
I'm going to be your psychologist by the end of this, yeah. Even therapists need therapists.
I haven't met a single therapist that didn't need a therapist. It's just part of the territory. Pre 12 months ago, had dabbled here and there with by podcasting. Like I was working only in the cannabis space as a cannabis nurse educator. So dabbled with some podcasting stuff in order to get into that space because I had no experience, I had no capital, I had no resources aside from attention. So I used that attention to build a podcast and then interview people with the idea that I could put those clips on LinkedIn and get found instead of having to go and find it. And so that worked. And so it kind of reframed the way that I did things in terms of getting attention, right? Because you want to get attention of opportunity. And generally a lot of people go into the front door and they go, well, I don't have the experience, I can't hit the resume, so I'm not going to go in the front door. Some people try and find that back door. And then there's the option of just
the third door.
Just create your own door. And
how many times I've done that in my life?
Every door. I've never gone in the front door. They're pushing and pulling. They're like, no, this is a slide. I'm like, I'll go around the back. And then Mr. Joe Fowler, he was just
Joe
for months saying, dude, post a video on TikTok. I'm like, no, I don't know why I would do that or how I would do that or what I'd talk about. He's just like, just pick any of the things you blabber on to me about. Roll with that. And I did that and it started to work. And then it kind of kept working. And then I went over to the gram, and it took me a while to get the courage to post it on Instagram because I was just afraid of what people would think.
I remember seeing that. I remember seeing that back and forth. We spoke about this before you began posting.
Yeah. I think we were at Strawberry Fields, and that was before I was on Instagram.
That's right.
And then when I put it on Instagram, I just like Instagram more, and it just started to work there too. And then since then, it's been just this. I don't know. It's kind of a beast that I don't understand yet, right? Because I have this audience that's there that's built off of things that I've said that's, they're really just me speaking about the human experience. We all experience these similar things. And through that process, people have resonated with it. And they're like, oh my God, I can't believe I found this at this time. How did you know? It's like, because I'm feeling anxious too, brother. Like, I'm just voicing my own experience here in a way that hopefully is helpful and practical, and we can utilize. And then it's a process of figuring out myself how to utilize this thing that's being built. And so I've always been conscious of like the social equity, right? I don't want to do brand deals. I don't want to do one-off things. I really value the trust that's being built, and I'm not willing to sacrifice that for like a temporary gain. But then figuring out how to like productize yourself is a whole nother journey, right? To figure out how to actually turn this into something that can sustain life, generate income, because you need to do that. And like people are like, oh, the talons of capitalism sink into yet another mindful practice. It's like, you don't get me, because I'm going for freedom. And for me, freedom is achieved through business, because I'm not going to keep renting my time out for money. And I plan on getting as much out of this human experience as possible. And so it's like this blend that's occurred because I love philosophy, I like spirituality, I like neuroscience, I like business. and they're all related. They're all the same. Everything helps everything. And so it's like kind of figuring out how to flow with that in a way that feels good, but knowing as well that what might feel good in one moment will feel terrifying the next. And so learning to like flow through all of those feelings, because it can be really weird. Like I'm sitting here in this little home office by myself, like pumping out thoughts to an audience of hundreds of thousands of people, and asking them what they want. Like, but then as soon as you try to think about what they want, then I've lost the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not you. I see how you communicate, and you know, I'm looking up to how you communicate in the content that I want to do. But I've come to realize that it's not you there. You're just a mouthpiece of something else, because I can't do that. Well, maybe one day, maybe I have a different approach to but like you are just a mouthpiece to something more. And whatever combination of gifts have occurred to get you to this point, it's above you now. It's above and beyond you.
Well, thank you. That's really sweet to hear, and it's beautiful. And it also takes a responsibility away from it a little bit. You know, like the idea of going out there to create value, I'm seeing more and more as the idea that I think I need to create value in itself takes away from my ability to be the value. And so, like, learning how to say things and elucidate clearly and speak full sentences is really just a means for the value to emerge as opposed to the value in itself. If that makes sense?
Well, the value's somewhere deeper inside of it.
Well, it's such an energy game. Like, the words are just these packages for energy, and that's what lands most often is not necessarily what I said, but what was behind the thing that was said.
People can feel that very, very clearly and very deeply. Yeah. So, Heyday Medical. Tell us about that. How did it start?
Yeah,
what is it?
Heyday Medical. So Heyday Medical is not my company, but they were the people that were wild enough to give a nurse with no experience a high-level job teaching other nurses and doctors. Honestly, insane when said out loud. But like, shout out to Dr. Jim and Phoebe. They're two power siblings that, through their own personal experiences with cancer and chronic disease in their family, Jim wanted to create a medicine that actually enhanced quality of life. And then I've always been obsessed about cannabis because it's just this absurdly complex and wonderful amalgamation of nature. Like, it's made up of everything else in nature, just kind of shoved into one plant, interacting with a system, the endocannabinoid system, that no other medicine or plant interacts with. And so it's really special. And I always knew that I wanted to get into the cannabis space. And then from there, I know I'll go into psychedelics one day.
We can talk about that on another
family. Yeah.
I love it. Yeah, we should do that.
McConnells are, they started this whole show off really because they recognized me from a podcast, and then they're like, we want you to do more of that. And so they've really just been facilitating this weird journey the whole time, where like, because my role is adapted and shifted pretty dramatically and frequently, it keeps shifting and changing, and I keep going back to them, like, yo, things are changing, and they're like, okay, we'll support you.
That's so good though, because then it gives you the creative expression to still like keep doing what you're doing in a really authentic way that doesn't require you to like shift to please, you know, an algorithm or to get more sales, and then you start to like lose yourself. So that's really good to have that kind of support.
It sure has been, especially because they've recognized as well that I'm all about playing long-term games with long-term people.
That's my go-to. So, you know how many times I've said that in a meeting?
Have you meant it every time though?
Every single time.
Okay.
Every single
good.
time. Yeah. And the people's eyes just go.
It's such a powerful thing because, I mean, I just want to have a life of collaboration, right? Like, I think that it's most fun to build and create and co-create from that place of abundance rather than scarcity, right? Because collaboration, it takes a place of competition. Whenever there's a sensation of competition, it's like, hang on, how is this actually collaboration? How is this benefiting me and actually showing me what's possible rather than what's taken? Because if I think that something's taken, that's a scarcity mindset that indicates that there's not enough to go around, but there absolutely is. And so that long-term games with long-term people, it's, to me, a life of collaboration, and it kind of requires us to find the identify finite versus infinite players. Like you can tell when someone's in it just for that superficial reason, and that's not a good or bad thing. It's just a neutral fact that climbing the corporate ladder and making intelligent decisions within business and the allocation of resources and stacking those chips, that's like these finite games. But then the infinite games are doing it for the love of it and for the passion of it and for the wisdom that comes from community and connection and just all of those kind of things where as you build those, they just keep creating themselves. Like they're infinite. They're not a finite thing like the corporate ladder. And so you identify these people that they understand that we have to stack the finite in a way that allows us freedom, but also with those infinite games in mind, because that's what makes it really fun and enjoyable.
I've noticed myself having some trouble usually getting past the competitive fear, the fear of competition, the fear of loss due to competition. And it's not something I've managed to resolve yet. But and I know it stems from scarcity through childhood. Like I know it, I see it, but understanding it and then actually changing at a core level where your actual feeling to a situation changes is really tough. And like, have you dealt with anything like that, or have you always been quite collaborative?
I mean, no, because it's really this. A lot of these things are daily integrations that we need to do, right? Like daily acceptance, daily letting go, sometimes moment by moment acceptance, because we can't control what emerges, right? Like when something emerges through scarcity, like a sensation, a feeling, a thought, we can't control that having happened because, we were thrust into existence, going through a childhood that we had no control over, having all of that downloaded and programmed into us, and then we get to a point where we're aware of it, and that's when we start to decode and unlearn some of those things. And maybe even it's not even about unlearning it. It's about just adding more forks in the road, because we're dealing with neural pathways, and these are physical things that are lodged in our brain, and they're not going to be extracted anytime soon. And so it's less about like making new patterns and letting go of all the old ones, and it's more about adding little forks in the road so that we have options, so that when we feel that an element of survival stress and scarcity and fear of competition, we can remember, hang on, how would I think about this in an abundantly way? All right, well, that person that has more followers than me, or seems like they're more successful than me, and maybe even they're younger than me, that just shows that it's possible. They're showing me that I can do that too. They're showing me that there's no competition in a market of one. And when you have that intention to co-create, it's something that self-perpetuates, and that abundance is a quality rather than a quantity. It doesn't mean that there's a lot of things. It means that abundance is just the sheer presence of everything that exists. And in order for any suffering and scarcity to even exist on one side means that there is paradoxically this inverse abundance on the other side. And so there's an abundance of suffering, yeah, but there's also an abundance of joy. There's an abundance of like turmoil and angst, and there's also an abundance of ambition and motivation, and all of these things are completely tied together, right? Like it's not like we fall into an abundance mindset and that just solves it from then on, because then we have to act in accordance with that thing.
How have you done that?
This comes back to this faith kind of that I've built, right? Like if I see a buddy that's had any kind of win, I'm like, abundance. If I go outside and the grass has grown and I got to mow it again, I'm like, abundance.
If my house is flooded from rain,
that's
abundance.
And it is, because we think that abundance has this inherently good quality to it, but it's a quality of the universe rather than a moralistic kind of judgment of something, because we look at scarcity versus abundance, scarcity bad, abundance good, but abundance means there's infinite amount of everything, all the good and the bad, and it's kind of up to our position here is to reframe the perspective so that we pour attention into the good of the abundance. Because we could say, that's a peril of awareness. People have an awakening, and then they are awakened to how much suffering there is, and then it causes them suffering, right? But the awareness above that is that, that in order for that suffering to exist, there's an equal amount of joy and love and connection, because it's just this constant exchange of energies that's occurring at all times, and it's up to us to decide where we point our attention.
I relate to that so much, and you explained it so perfectly. Like I love living by the saying that we just live in this infinite world of possibility, and that to me, it's like my inner child gets excited because I'm like, anything's possible. Oh my God, we can do anything. Like, and it's funny because like everything that I'm currently doing in my life as well, like being exposed to so much suffering and visually seeing it, like when I was in Africa, I came home and I was like, there's equal opportunity now to just witness and observe that, but also see that these people, although they're suffering, they don't act as if they are, because they are the happiest, they experience the most joy, they have the most appreciation for the little things. And, it was almost like coming back home here. It took me so long to try and get back into the rhythm of real life, because I was like, how do we... What do you mean you're saying that's a problem? That's not a problem. Like that, what are you talking about? But then it's like, well, hang on, Mon, like check yourself, because everything is also relative. Like if people don't know, they don't know. Whereas if you've seen one side, it's like experience. I always say this to people, like, I don't actually even like saying good and bad. It's neutral. It is what it is. It's what you attach to it. It's what angle you come in from it. And like people always say to me, you're just always really positive about, things that are negative. And I'm like, well, why is it negative? Because experience has shown me that these things that I used to view as negative, give it some time and it's actually worked in your favor. You just don't see it because you're so close to it right now. But take yourself out of it, which is really hard to do, obviously, when you're in it. But experience when you're aware during those moments or those times, 6 months down the track, you go, wow, that breakup had to happen for all this other stuff to open up. Oh, wow, that I had to lose that job or quit that job and sit in that uncertainty or that mystery for a little bit, because then that's where I saw a lot more. And so it's really cool, like all this stuff that you're saying, because ultimately what I'm starting to realize as well is it's just coming down to the faith, like faith in the universe, the faith that everything I desire and I want is already coming to me. And the more that I think that, the more I go, there's actually not that many roadblocks. And even if there are, it's cool. Like it's fine. It's not a bad thing.
It's part of the game.
It's part of it. It's exactly part of it.
Exactly part of it. That, because thinking positively is generally not an automatic skill that we have. We have a negativity bias. Our brains designed or evolved to just constantly point out the danger.
And save ourselves from the saber-toothed tiger that's about to run into the office. Holy shit.
Yeah, exactly right. Like we have this brain that's always just, it's wired for being on like midnight level threat. And because we can't ever know anything until it's past, right? Like hindsight is the only way that we can see how things have happened. And so when we are in that place of uncertainty, it comes back to knowing that it's working out. Right? The faith, the knowledge that it is working out, not even a belief, because when you know something, you don't believe it, you know it.
Yeah.
Whereas if you believe something, you don't know it. And so I know that it's working out. I know that it's all working in my favor. I know that every bit of stress and turmoil and angst I go through is something that just refines my ability to navigate that again when it inevitably arises. And it's all just this kind of game of neutrality, whereas when things emerge, I can extract my my definition of it and my characterization of it, whether it's good or bad, and just be like, maybe. Everything is maybe, always and forever. And I know that if I can continue acting in accordance with how I feel, then it's always going to work out, and I'll only see how it does in hindsight looking back.
Yeah.
That's a very challenging thing for people to move forward. A lot of people just struggle to move because of the lack of clarity. So what advice would you give somebody who, is in the cloudy, I guess, mire of the world, but like has some faint idea of somewhere they want to be, but they just don't know where to go or how to do it and get stuck?
Clarity is something that only really emerges in the absence of certainty. Because certainty in itself is like this illusion or even a delusion. We've decided that what we see and what we know is enough, and so we're going to stop questioning that thing, and that certainty is it's something that can maintain itself for a while, but often will get fractured at some point, and that's when things really break down. Whereas if we can really surrender and accept uncertainty as an inherent quality of the universe, as literally almost the foundational quality of the universe, because if the universe is in this perpetual state of expansion and we are components of this universe and are also in this state of expansion, we cannot know what it is that we are or where we're going as we're actively creating ourselves. And the idea of clarity is, if you look at a pond on a still day, and that clarity is there's cohesive energy, right? The energy of the water is in a cohesive state with the energy of the air and the wind above it, and it results in this stillness that allows you to see things clearly. But if you try and reach into that clarity, whether you're trying to scoop it up and express it and take it away with you, you inevitably bring up this silt and this dust, and what was clear and perfect and reflective before is now hazy and confusing. And the way that we allow that clarity to emerge again is not by continuing to dig things up, but by allowing all of that dust and dirt to settle, which is the hard thing, because we want to feel like we know what's going on. We have this desire to know how it is that we're going to get to the place that we don't know where we're going yet, but it's not possible. It's only something that we can know in hindsight. And so it comes back to this ridiculousness of how do you want to feel today? How do you want to feel this week? What are the little things that you want to achieve? Because it's all this butterfly effect that even if we were to have a grand overarching vision, that only ends up manifesting through these tiny little actions. I don't have a vision, so to speak. I have fragments of ideas, but really every day I have to figure out what to do. And most of my plans are things that only emerge through the action of doing in no certain direction. It's like clarity is something that emerges out from action, but it's a blend, like creativity. It's action and immersion, but also stillness that allows for that consolidation. Because clarity comes to us when we're not thinking about what it is that we're trying to get clear on.
I like that. I've never heard that analogy before. I really, really like that.
Sorry, I just want to jump in because as you were saying that, I started laughing because, again, going back to the whole thing that I'm doing in Africa, there's this big picture vision that I can just see so clearly. Like I can see myself walking through this village that I have helped built, and everybody at the moment who I'm telling this to, this big idea that I have, they're like, but how are you going to do it? And I'm like, I have no fucking idea, but I know that it is possible. And I know that it's going to happen, and I know that it might be challenging at times, but there is this part of me that can literally, if I close my eyes, I can feel myself there to the point where I know the song I will use for the video of the documentary. Like, it is so there that I'm like, I will figure it out as I go. And they're like, but this isn't just like a thing that you just throw into the mix and do. Like, you're trying to build a school in Africa. I'm like, I understand that, but I can just see it. And now there's this innate trust and knowing in me that I'm going to figure it out because it's what I'm supposed to do right now. And until it's, like you said, that feeling stops and it stops feeling right, or it doesn't work anymore, then okay, I'll change things up. But until then, I thought about it today and I thought, wow, if I wasn't doing this thing in my life, it's such a big chunk of my life right now, what would I be doing? And then it was doesn't matter, because again, do the little things now, and the little things are what create the bigger things.
I really admire that preservation of clarity as well. Because I rarely have big grand visions. It's lots of little ideas and things that are possible here and there, and they lack any kind of concrete nature in my brain, and so they're really susceptible to getting disrupted by other energies. And so I've learning to be more conscious about when I share ideas, who I share those ideas with, because I can't expect them to give me any clarity around something that for me is still unclear.
Yeah.
And that feedback, unless I'm speaking to somebody who I feel has actually been in that place, then that feedback can often just disrupt any clarity that I did have in the first place. And it's not to say that we shouldn't seek out mentors and advice and guidance, but it's reminding ourselves that the best advice, the best mentor, the best guidance is something that just comes through our own experience, because that experience is like information and consolidated, made personally relevant to us. And that's where that wisdom comes from, right? Like I can repeat somebody else's quotes all day, but until I come to a point in my life where I need to actually fall back on that and use it, then it will remain knowledge and not wisdom.
Yeah.
Yeah, fully. So with all the work you're doing now, it's moving in a very interesting direction. And you mentioned that you don't really have a huge overarching vision on where it goes from here. What's driving you? Why are you doing all of this?
It's fun.
Sick. Love that.
Enjoyable.
I love that. So you're just having fun with it?
Yeah, and I have to remind myself that is the intention, right? Because it's easy to start taking it seriously, but I don't want to be seen as serious, right? Like I don't know most things, and so I don't want to be trying to play the role of a character that does have certainty, that does know what the heck's going on. And so I have to keep reminding myself when it gets stressful and overwhelming, hey, dude, are you having fun right now? Because this doesn't seem like it's fun. Go back to that.
You know what, though? I think about this a bit, and it's sometimes like when things get really stressful and the weight of the world's on your shoulders, you sometimes got to check and remind yourself that we're just like floating on a big rock and none of this really matters that much. But also it does. It's a weird one. And my question to you is, how do you grapple with the idea that none of it matters, but also everything matters?
It's like this paradox of awareness, similar to the paradox of like acceptance and self-growth and development. It's like radical acceptance. I accept who I am and what I
accept.
I like it. So then I accept that I have a role to play in changing this outcome and this experience. These things are like these paradoxes can be really paralyzing and disabling, because when we are granted with that aspect of just like helplessness or purposelessness, like I really think that we are kind of like adrift in a purposeless void, but that doesn't mean it doesn't have meaning, because the meaning is something that we are actively creating. And you know, that's what religion does. That's what spirituality does. These are all just different meaning-generating frameworks. And understanding that nothing matters is really liberating, because it frees me from the responsibility of caring about things that I've been told to care about, and it gives me more capacity to actually direct attention towards the things I've decided I care about. And I have to remind myself, I have to remember, and it's not easy. It's simple, because the only thing I have to do is not hold on. Right, like letting go and accepting should be really easy, because it's the opposite of doing anything. We don't have to hold on anymore. It's just not holding on to the idea of doing things the way that we think we should be doing them for a certain purpose. Like purpose is something that I've kind of finding in every day, and you know, when it comes to why I do it, it makes me feel good to connect and express and learn and grow. And that in itself is something that makes the moment to moment enjoyable. Because if I'm working towards a big grand goal, then I understand. I know what hedonic adaptation is. I know that we have to come back to the baseline of this human experience. And so my goal is to really try and make that baseline a better place to be, so that we can find more acceptance and just contentment wherever we are, instead of needing to run away from how we feel all the time.
So basically none of it matters, so it's a choose your own adventure.
It is a choose your own adventure.
I think it's the tone of, like, I remember asking myself this as well, and it was funny because when I asked myself in two different tones of voice, and one was like nothing matters, but then it was like
nothing matters.
Like sick, I can do whatever I want, like, oh my God, this is amazing. And yeah, I think it's like, it just goes back to that like whole self-talk thing of, it's literally how you speak to yourself that is going to determine, you know, and sometimes it just literally comes down to the tone of voice of how you're saying it. That can create that real shift. I know it's happened for me multiple times where I've said something and then I've reframed it just by saying it in a different tone, and I was like, actually, it's not as bad as it seems.
Yeah.
This is actually all right.
Yeah.
Hey, you know what? Let's just go do this.
I so love that because the way that we speak to ourselves, about the world around us, that is how we filter in the
Information.
stimuli of the world around us into our experience. And we do have certainly control over that. Not many people realize it, but an easy place to start is be aware of when you're using absolutes in your language. Like, I never do this, I always do this, I can't seem to ever get this right. It's like that's all just atrophy of growth.
I've got this on my wall, and I've spoken about this a bunch of times. I read it somewhere. It's like, add yet to everything that you can't do whenever you say something. And it sits on my whiteboard in my office. So now it's become an ingrained habit. It's like, oh, I can't do a handstand yet. I can't speak like Cam yet. Like even if deep down I don't believe I can do it yet. Yet. I love it. So I fully agree. Call it spells, right? Spelling.
Well, yeah, that's why they say, I read it somewhere, it was actually a language, I don't even know what the name of the person is, but it's someone who really specializes in language, and she said, be careful with the words that you use, because why do you think it's called spelling? Words cast spells, and it can paralyze us, or it could actually liberate and free us. So paying attention to the words you use, the absolute you use, that is going to embed itself deeply, and it's going to be quite a mountain to try and unlearn it or unhinge it to reframe. And it's the same thing with, like, I hate it when people say I'm such a perfectionist, and it's like, that's a label. You're just labeling yourself a perfectionist. All you're suffering from is procrastination, because you're paralyzing yourself by saying I can't do this or I can't do that because it has to be perfect. Like, it's just a habit that you've created. Habits are easier to break than labels are. And that's what I keep saying to people, like, break the habit. Don't add a label. And even that reframing for me, when I started doing that, like, I don't call myself a perfectionist or a procrastinator. I'm like, why am I engaging in this habit of procrastinating right now?
Nice.
You know?
Use the nuance of language.
Yeah.
To take the ceilings off and create more of an open-ended space that allows for growth. Because, I mean, that's one of the most powerful things that people can do, is realize their attachments to their identity, like where the ego has attached what they do to who they are. Because anything that can even be liberating to begin with can become a prison in itself. It's like people start doing yoga, and then they get into spirituality, and then they become maybe vegan, but then one day their body screams at them like, yo, I want meat. But there's that cognitive dissonance of like, well, no, but I'm a vegan, and that's my identity, it's who I am. It's like, it's just a label, it's just a definition, and in the process of defining ourselves, we impoverish ourselves from everything that we could be, everything that doesn't fit in that label. Like, with identity politics even right now, it's just such a waste of energy that all these people, like, I am this presentation of gender, this is my diagnosis, this is my energy, this is my star sign. It's like, these are all conceptualized definitions based upon a very limited amount of perceptive tools that we have that are in themselves based upon an entire set of memories that are completely hallucinated. So,
no, I agree. I think we've spoken about this maybe on the podcast, where, like, when people say I'm depressed or I have anxiety. It's like you're just experiencing a moment of anxiety right now, but it will flee. Because, like everything in life, it comes and it goes. But if you get stuck because you've attached this label again to yourself, it's hard to break. Like, sure, there's just going to be things around you that you need to fix and change. And obviously the first step is the awareness piece and becoming actually aware of what it is that's causing you that suffering. But then I think about suffering, and I'm like, suffering is also a comfort zone. It's easier to suffer because you don't know what's going to happen when you start to make the moves and you start to become happy, because that negative bias is going to go, well, it's going to all end. It's just going to end. But it's like, oh, well, yes, it will.
It's part of it.
It's part of it. And then you're going to have to go through that ebb and flow all over again. It's never going to just be this all the time. In my personal opinion, life would be pretty boring if it was just this.
And it's not the way that reality works, right? Like we, because of the way that, how do I explain this? This is a new territory. When we sit and do like maybe an open-eyed meditation, right, where the practice for me is that I might just sit and just stare at one focal point, maybe like a certain branch on a tree or a rock in a stream and just look and look and look and look and allow the barriers to dissolve, like the definitions of that not being a stream anymore, that not being water, that not being a tree, stripping back the conceptual version of reality allows you to kind of immerse in this stream, this never-ending, continually changing stream of experience. And that's what reality is, just the sheer presence of experience.
And information. It's really all information, isn't it? Yeah.
And our brain, in the process of saying what something is, we're always using the past in order to define that. Like whether this is the right step or the wrong step, we're using a bank of hallucinated memories again to define what that is. And those memories are shaped by a conceptual version of reality that calls a tree rather than something that is just crazy emergence of reality, of all of these infinitely complex systems that are just blossoming life. And there's no actual continuity to anything, because every moment is just this. The only thing that endures is the moment, not the things experienced within the moment. That's all transient and temporary. And it's like when we have a really good day and we're feeling awesome, we don't tend to think like I'm going to feel like this forever. We know
maybe you can.
But when we have anxiety, it's like it paints the prediction of your life in this color, this bleak, dismal color that, you know, people would look at my Instagram and be like, well, he's not really figured out. He's doing good things. I'm freaking out, dude. But I go for a walk, you know, and I literally will say to myself, especially lately, it's okay. It's okay. Like, if this were to happen forever, that's okay.
Yeah.
And it's like it takes away the need to like push it away or pull it closer, and I just say, it's okay. And it kind of just creates this space of openness that allows that emergence to dissipate. It's like the sky is not holding on to any of the clouds. It doesn't push away the storms. It just holds space for all of it, and it comes and it goes. But when we feel the storm inside of us, we try and reject it, we push it away, and we just add more power to that thing.
So, 2 questions. Where's your ego attached right now?
Oh, geez. Good question. I mean, the whole social media thing is obviously a big part of it, because when you get validation for what you're doing, it's easy for you to kind of rest on that validation as like, I'm valid now, right? But then you get trapped.
Were you not valid before that?
Well, exactly, right? I was. I don't need any external validation to tell me what I am. But even the process of trying to monetize things and defining some kind of value so that it's worth it for other people, your ego comes into play there, because I'm sitting here like, you know, last week I had this idea and I worked on it all week of like this thing that I wanted to launch. And it was just my brain just like dumping things onto the piece of paper, being like, I know that I don't know what this is called. I just know that if they buy it and come and sit down with me, they're going to love it. But I'm too open-ended to define some certain thing, because I also don't want to tell people exactly, oh, this is where to start. Like, this is a linear course, and you start here, and we go through A, B, C, D. It's like, nah, this is all non-linear and multi-dimensional. I think that doesn't answer the question. My ego is probably attached to the idea of success and inspiring and motivating and doing good, which then can exist in contrast when I don't feel good, when I don't feel motivated, because that feeling of motivation is usually how I create. It's the energy that I use when I do my stuff. So when that feeling is gone, not only do I try and push away the feeling of not being motivated, but that motivation is attached to this validation, which is attached to this social like acceptance and perception of status, which is then attached to my ability to earn income, which is attached to my survival, which is attached to my level of peace and satisfaction and happiness in life. And so it's not just that I'm not feeling motivated right now, is that I'm not feeling motivated, and here's all the dominoes crashing down to get to a point of like, you don't know what the fuck you're doing.
Okay.
Does
I
anyone?
don't even know what my own ego is.
Does anyone? Yeah. So
my ego is having an ego crisis.
right this second. So okay, well I'm conscious of our time, and I feel like we could talk for 3 hours. So maybe we should book in a time to talk for 3 hours next time. But you made a little point before in that domino of, ego to perpetual crisis, where about your peace. How do you go about finding your peace?
That is it's through the practice, right? Because the
Practice
idea
of
of a
what?
practice, well, the idea of a practice is putting, applying awareness, right? Like using information and applying that and integrating it, because if we don't act on awareness, that awareness can often become suffering. So the awareness for me is like, all right, well, okay, I'm aware. I have some knowledge that there might be some oneness and some transience to this whole experience. How do I put that into practice? And a lot of that is slowing down. Like, if I'm getting to a point where I'm in a stress state and I'm activated and charged, but it's not the type of stress that enhances my performance and is something that instead is like just spiraling me into confusion, I'll go, whoa, dude, slow down. Go outside, and to me, anything I can do to feel my way into the present moment. So the meditation practice is huge, because I sit down and my brain says, yo, dude, here's all the things that you forgot about, all the things you should have been thinking about. And for like 5 minutes, the brain is going, blah, 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 blah. Bill's over here. The ATO is going to come knocking soon. Like, you're doing all this wrong. You failed this thing. It's like, I'm sitting now. And the brain's like, you should get up and go act. And I just go, I'm sitting. And the brain goes, okay then. And then we sit, and just eventually, I'll sit down until I'm different. No timer.
And what is different?
Heart-brain coherence.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
Come back to a place of acceptance, and it's like really loving and embracing the not knowing, and just the impossibility of trying to describe and figure out this experience that takes away my, the responsibility of me doing that, right? Like, peace is something that has to be cultivated within the chaos, and paradoxically, it can only exist because of the chaos. If there was no chaos, we wouldn't even have a notion of peace, because it'd all just be this like neutral experience. Peace is a lot of just deliberate slowing down, because when I slow down my physical movements, everything else kind of slows down. But when you're in that charged state, you're like, I got to reply to this email, I got to do this and that. It's like even just slowing down 10, 20% just puts things into perspective. And it's like it's like the horse and cart is like they're sort of running off the road, and slowing down is like picking up the reins again and going, whoa, I get back on the track here. I don't know where we're going, but we're going to do it slowly.
You're going to hate me, but you said that you meditate until you feel that cohesion. But, I've had a fair bit of experience now in this space, and the meditation begins at the point of the cohesion. So you need to sit longer.
There's this like the fucking paradox of all of this stuff is hilarious, and also
that's what I mean. You've just got to laugh at it sometimes, and be like, I don't know. Like I don't know. Literally,
none of it matters.
No, that's the most powerful thing that we can do.
Yeah.
Not only I don't know, but I relinquish the need to know. I relinquish the desire to know how I'm gonna get where I want to get to. I trust that I am fucking getting there. That you will never go backwards. That every step is the right step. Rather than being concerned, like, is this the right step? Is this the wrong step? They're all just steps. And with a little bit of reflection and introspection, we can see what we enjoyed about those steps and what we didn't, and step in those enjoyable directions more often, more frequently, with more sure footing. But like this idea of going through life, it's any notion of kind of where we're going is an incredible thing that the brain can do. We can translate this ethereal energy of a thought into something that you can hold. You can translate the energy of a thought into a school in Africa, right? Like you can do this. That's this incredible capacity for manifestation we have. And it occurs on this quantum level and on this very 2D and 3D level. And a lot of that, though, is that if we have a vision and we can start to orient ourselves in the direction we think it might be, and start to do things that, start to create the conditions that allow that life to emerge, that allow that self to emerge. It's like, all right, if we want to be healthy, don't focus on health. Focus on creating the conditions that allow that health to emerge. Because if we're sitting in the mirror being like, I want to drop 20 pounds or something, and all of our energy is directed at those pounds, then everything that we're doing is done through this level of desperation of like, how do I get here? But if we can know that that's what we want, and it's good to have it, we can have it desires, but bring ourselves away from the desire and towards where our feet are so that we can start just building those conditions that allow those desires to emerge. And then through that process, we start to find that just doing the things is fun. That the process of like, okay, yeah, I want health, I want to drop that weight, but now I'm finding that for the first time ever, I have a body, I have an experience. I'm no longer just this head attached to this thing, but I am cohesive with myself. That like this is just this incredible energetic vessel, and by piloting it around, I can go deeper and deeper into this experience and develop this rich awareness of what it means to be outside of what I think it means. And that process manifests these really pure reciprocations of the universe, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
I've manifested exactly where I am right now. I know that. I never had a vision of it, so to speak, like an image of it, but I absolutely manifested this exact situation. And when those things occur, it's easy to like, you know, like I'm up here in my dream home in a dream place with my dream fiance, living a dream life, and then I can still wake up and go, whoa, you panicking today, dude?
Yeah, none of us can get away from it. That's what I love about that, Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. With that book, you realize that even the most powerful and some of the greatest people controlling some of the biggest empires in the world still feel anxious, still have the same shit.
Still Google how to do things.
yeah. How to be happy on Google.
That is it, right? Doesn't matter, what kind of level of security and sustainability and freedom you have. Like generating wealth and money, that's just a buffer from the stress of the world, right? Like
solves your money problems.
Chaos.
Not your problems.
Yeah, money problem is a huge thing. That's a huge part of the human experience that not enough people talk about is money. It's like this taboo thing of we don't want to reference how fucked up it makes everybody. Like we want to, like, it's like it kind of flavors all of our ambitions and all of our dreams and all of our visions, because in order to make any of it happen, we need the capital. And in order to buffer ourselves from the chaos of the external world, we need that capital. And it's hard to think expansively and figure out who we are when the boot's on our neck and we can't take a look around. But then even after that, if we gain that security, what's left is taming the mind.
Well, the second stage is money is a form of validation, and it's a form of acceptance. And once you need to understand the root of why you're feeling so much stress and pain above the foundations of survival. But a lot of us are above the foundations of survival. And still
hungry.
everyone's... Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of hungry. I haven't eaten today, but...
I was jacked up on yerba mate, dude.
Yeah, we love. Oh, I love that. Well, there's so much I want to talk to you about. But look, we didn't even get to the core of kind of what you're doing with things. We kind of just skimmed over it. So, but I'd love to hear...
I got 10 more minutes.
What is neurophilosophy?
Yeah, I saw that on your Instagram and I was like, what is that? Did he just make that up? Or
I thought I did, but of course I didn't. I haven't had any original thoughts yet that I'm aware of. Neurophilosophy is just this idea that, like, when I go back through all of these philosophies, all of the things that I've resonated with, like whether it was reading like Buddhist scriptures or stoic philosophy with the old-time daddy Marcus Aurelius, or Lao Tzu and the Tao Te Ching, like reading all of these things, I'm like, they're all kind of saying the same thing. Like they really are just saying the same things in different ways. And
there's core foundations in all of it.
These core underlying principles of the human experience, and people go through suffering and they translate that into wisdom that allows us to navigate the suffering, right? Like it's this constant iterative effect where they keep passing us knowledge. And then what's crazy is that the things that the Hindus were saying 8,000 years ago, and the Buddhists and the Zen monks and the Taoists and the early Christians, it's like all of them were saying these same things. And now I'll go and listen to a podcast with Huberman, and neuroscience says the exact same thing. It's like, oh, okay, so having a desire is this kind of contract like Naval said, a contract that we make with ourselves that we won't be happy until we get that thing. But not only is this kind of meta principle, but also we have this thing called a reward prediction error, which is neuroscience. It says when we have an expectation, when we have a desire and an expectation, and we don't have that expectation fulfilled, then the gap between what we got and what we wanted is disappointment. And so neuroscience is coming in saying the same thing that the Buddhists were saying, the same thing that the Taoists were saying. And so it's just neurophilosophy, because philosophy is like this code that we put into our brain that acts as a different operating software to navigate reality in a way that is hopefully more beneficial and enjoyable to us. And
It's frameworks.
And they update themselves over time as well, right? Like, I know that there's a lot of philosophy that I've spoken about that has yet to be relevant fully for me, because I've yet to encounter an experience in life that really forces me or causes me to go back and fall back to that place. Like, I certainly look at it and I resonate with it and I'll feel it, but I haven't really had to use it in many ways yet. Recently I have, because I've been a mess. that gives you the wisdom, right? Like, when you have to put those words into practice, they update themselves, and it
ingrain
meaning. Yeah.
Well, isn't it like experience? But you need the emotion behind what you're reading or learning for it to actually ingrain into your brain. Otherwise, it just doesn't. It's not wisdom.
It's not
just
wisdom,
knowledge.
and it doesn't feel good. Like, because I've even when it comes to creating content, right? Like, every single video that I've done has been a different kind of idea, and looking back, I'll be able to see that they're not different ideas; that they all kind of do go together. I'm only going to be able to see that through hindsight, but Joe's telling me, like, on my off days when because I have plenty of days where I don't feel like saying anything, and I don't think I have anything to say.
That's where the work is. That's where the creative work is.
That's where the work is. And Joe's like, well, just go back and say one of your old videos. I'm like, yeah, but the energy's not there. Can't do it. Can't do it.
Have you read The War of Art?
I haven't read that.
You should read that. You should get it today. I'll even buy it for
I will
you.
get it today, because I'm also going to get Rick Rubin's new book.
I haven't heard of it, but
Bro, listen to the latest Rick Rubin and
with
Huberman Lab.
yeah, I've got it on my list.
I've got goosebumps just thinking about it. It is
I'll do that.
really profound and could not be more relevant to everything that we're all doing. It's all art. It's all creativity. Like, existence requires a creative brain. That's what this brain does. Is it takes the infinite potential of the unknown and stacks it into the next step.
You know what I love about Rick Rubin? He just doesn't wear shoes. I fucking love that. I love that. No, but it's great because I don't wear shoes. Any chance I can, I'm just walking around barefoot. And people are like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Don't wear shoes." Who told you to wear shoes?
Dude, you look at they're like, "You're weird for not wearing shoes." It's like, you're weird because you have organs that are starved of sensation. Your feet are starved.
Oh, I love that. Well, you know what? Going back to the Naval thing as well, it's like. No, what you said about Naval and all those guys. I think someone else said it. Maybe it was, I can't remember anyway. The older the problem, the older the solution. So, you look at the issues that we've had as humans. Some of these issues are foundational for a very, very long time. Like, how do we connect with one another? How do we not be stressed? All of these pieces. And then you look at the approaches to solving those problems, and you've got, Taoism, a lot of religion, you've got Stoicism, you've got all these different philosophies that have developed thousands and thousands of years ago to solve the core foundational human problems. And they still work because these are problems that have been thought about for thousands of years. Yeah. So
it makes me think as well, like, we didn't start off thinking this way, right? Our evolutionary process, we began as this I don't know, some kind of slug-like creature, I guess, coming out of the sea, just sniffing. We just started sniffing our way around. Like, that one hurt. That one didn't. That one hurt. That one made me feel very strange.
Like, what is the meaning of all this? Get to mushies.
Sniffing our way towards different senses. And we sniffed our way towards sight, and then we saw our way towards hearing, whatever it might have been. And then at some point, this entirely experiential and sensory life ended up thinking. And I'm not sure why. Did it start thinking because it had certain needs taken care of, and it became so advanced that it developed this desire, this unquenchable thirst to know what the heck was going on. And we kept thinking, and we thought our way to now, which is this pinnacle of human experience. Like, what we are experiencing right now is absolutely magical. It's
insane,
incredible.
We thought our way to neural nets, which we don't understand what is happening in the neural nets. We've created them and we're like, we don't know what's going on in there, but things keep popping out that make sense. That is fucking insane.
I love it.
All right, one more question before you go, and it's a very simple one. What is the why of all this? What is the meaning of life?
I think that what is the meaning, that life is the answer, not the question. It's something that emerges as you continue to live it. Right? Like
What do you mean?
Life is, when we ask what is the meaning of life, it's life asking itself what the meaning of it is, not realizing that the question is the answer.
Isn't that how we got here in the first place? As our little slug brains have developed, asking. So if you're asking, if you're trying to instill this piece of key wisdom and information to a person who's just going about their 9 to 5 and they're like, I don't get any of this, what's the point?
Again, nothing matters unless you decide it matters. So be ruthless with eliminating the shit from your life that doesn't matter, that doesn't serve you. Any notion of how you should live that doesn't feel good, if it doesn't feel good, then maybe it doesn't matter. In which case, the meaning of this life for me is to gather experiences and connect and go as deep into myself, and this experience is possible. That is the most enjoyable thing. It's not going to be easy. It never is anything that matters to me, but I've decided that that's my meaning, is to
experience the breadth of the world.
Express, yeah.
And all the human experiences that we can.
This is all just an unfolding question that as the universe expands, it can't define what it is as it's still growing. I can't touch the tip of this finger with the tip of this finger. The brain that's asking questions. The brain is a tool designed for thinking, and thinking is questioning. The thing that questions can't also be the thing that answers. And so that question is something that I should turn into action. What is the meaning of life? Well, I'll figure it out today and tomorrow and the next
It'll
day.
be different again. Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I've got another book you need to read that I think, have you heard of The Beginning of Infinity by David Deutsch?
No.
Bro, I'm going to send you these two. You will, I need someone to read this book, and then I need you to call me and we need to talk about it.
All right.
Okay?
Okay.
All right. Well, I'm conscious of your time. Love you a lot. It was amazing.
Thanks so much, you guys. Let's do this again for real, and I'll try and be more coherent next time.
No, we love Cam's ramblings. There's moments you should see. I'm just like pressing the mark clip constantly.
Yeah, I just speak myself into confusion. That's the problem.
But it's part of the dance, bro. It's part of the dance. It's
figuring it out as you go.
Yeah, I love it. I love you.
Thanks,
you.
Cam.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate it.